The colony of New Dawn orbited a pale blue star on the far edge of mapped human space. It had been built with patience and hope, 1,000 habitats linked by light bridges and spinning gardens. Families lived there, children were born there, and the flag of Earth floated quietly above the central spire. When the alien fleet arrived, there was no warning, no declaration, only shadows eclipsing the star. Energy lances tore through the habitats like fire through dry leaves. Cities vented atmosphere in silent blooms, and oceans of people vanished in minutes. The colony defense grid fired once before it was erased. By the time the distress signal reached Earth, New Dawn was already dead. All that remained were drifting wreckage fields and frozen bodies. The signal carried images, burning stations, screaming sensors, and an alien sigil carved into the remains of the central spire. On Earth, the message played in the United Assembly Hall, and no one spoke. Presidents, generals, and civilians watched the destruction together. It was not just an attack, it was an execution. The attackers did not try to claim the system, they did not communicate. They destroyed, marked the ruins, and left. That detail mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. Because it meant the message was meant to be seen. Within hours, Earth declared a unified war state. Old rivalries were suspended, borders became meaningless. Shipyards that had been dormant for decades came alive. Civilian factories were converted overnight. The name of the enemy was still unknown, but the response was not. Earth would answer in a language the stars could not ignore. Earth had not built a war fleet like this since the Dark Expansion era. Back then, humanity fought itself among the stars. This time, there was only one direction to look, outward. 700,000 warships became the target number, not symbolic, not rounded, precise. Strategists calculated loss projections and decided that overwhelming force was the only mercy. The fleet included everything: dreadnoughts the size of cities, carrier arcs filled with strike craft, autonomous drone swarms, and hospital ships that hoped they would not be needed. Every nation contributed, not because they were ordered to, but because they remembered the images of New Dawn. Citizens volunteered by the billions, knowing most would never leave the ground. The captains chosen were not politicians, they were survivors, veterans of pirate wars, border conflicts, and deep space disasters. Training simulations ran without pause, replaying the destruction of the colony again and again. The enemy ships were studied frame by frame, their weapons analyzed, their markings decoded. Linguists believed the sigil was not a name, but a warning. Engineers believed the weapons used were optimized for terror rather than efficiency. Both conclusions pointed to the same truth. This was not a misunderstanding between species. It was a declaration of dominance. When the first armada assembled near Mars, the planet disappeared behind metal and light. The sky above Earth glowed with engine trails every night. Children grew up watching warships leave instead of stars. And when the final count reached 700,000, Earth went quiet. The silence before departure was heavier than any alarm. The fleet moved as one, a river of steel flowing into hyperspace. There was no single flagship, no throne to strike. Humanity had learned that symbols could be weaknesses. Command was distributed, adaptable, and ruthless. The path to the enemy was not direct. Scouts followed the fading trail left by the attackers, jumping from system to system. Along the way, they found others. Burned worlds, shattered moons, and extinct civilizations. New Dawn had not been the first. That knowledge spread through the fleet like ice in the blood. Every discovery hardened resolve. The enemy finally revealed itself near a red giant, where a massive structure hung like a crown of blades. It was a fortress, a shipyard, and a shrine. Alien vessels poured from it, sleek and cruel, bearing the same sigil. They did not flee when they saw the human armada. They advanced, confident, perhaps curious. The first battle lasted 11 minutes. Human losses were severe, but the enemy lost everything in the system. The fortress burned, and for the first time, the alien ships broadcast a signal. It was simple and translated easily. "You were warned." No human commander replied. The fleet continued forward. Because revenge was no longer the mission. Ending the threat was. As the war deepened, the scale became impossible to comprehend. Star systems turned into graveyards. Entire fleets vanished in flashes of light that scarred spacetime. The enemy fought with fanatic precision, never retreating, never surrendering. Captured data revealed their doctrine. They believed other intelligent species inevitably became rivals. Their solution was eradication at first contact. Humanity responded with tactics born of desperation and creativity. False retreats, layered ambushes, and weapons that bent physics until it screamed. Each victory cost lives. Each defeat cost worlds. Some commanders began to question whether survival required becoming as merciless as the enemy. Others argued that restraint was a luxury of the extinct. The turning point came at the Obsidian Veil. There the enemy concentrated their remaining forces, believing numbers alone would break the human advance. 700,000 warships answered. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the alien civilization was effectively broken. Their command nodes were gone, their shipyards destroyed, their fleets reduced to fragments. Human losses were catastrophic, but Earth still stood. The question that remained was not how to win, but how to finish it. The final decision was made far from the battlefield. Earth chose not annihilation, but containment. The remaining alien worlds were isolated, monitored, and stripped of the ability to project force. A message was broadcast on every frequency. Humanity does not forget, and we do not strike first, but we will always strike last. Memorials to New Dawn were built across human space, not as symbols of hatred, but as warnings written in stone and light. The fleet returned home in fragments, scarred and incomplete. 700,000 warships had launched, far fewer came back. But they returned carrying something heavier than victory. They carried memory. In the years that followed, other species made contact, cautiously, peacefully. They had seen what happened to those who tried to erase humanity. Earth welcomed them with open hands and very clear borders. The stars grew quieter, and somewhere in the dark, the ruins of New Dawn drifted on. Not forgotten, not avenged, but answered. Long after the war officially ended, the universe did not feel at peace. Human space expanded again, but more slowly, as if every jump drive hesitated before tearing reality open. Veterans returned to worlds that felt smaller than they remembered. Some could not sleep without the low hum of a reactor nearby. Others dreamed of burning habitats and woke tasting metal and smoke. Earth called them heroes, but many of them felt like witnesses instead. They had seen what lay beyond the myths of the stars. The wreckage of the Great War became a new kind of map. Navigation charts marked regions of twisted gravity and radioactive ghosts. Entire systems were declared silent zones, not because they were dangerous, but because they were grave. Salvage crews moved carefully, saying nothing over open channels. They found alien ships fused into impossible shapes, human hulls cracked open like eggshells. Sometimes they found bodies, human and alien drifting together, frozen in the same final moment. Those remains were collected and honored, regardless of origin. Because after so much death, denying dignity felt like another kind of loss. The children born after the war learned history differently. They did not memorize dates first, they memorized consequences. Teachers spoke of New Dawn not as a place, but as a lesson. They showed the images again, the same ones that had once silenced the assembly hall. But now the rooms were filled with young faces that had never known a sky without warships. The children asked hard questions. Why did they attack first? Why did we answer with so much fire? Could it happen again? There were no simple answers, only honest ones. In the outer reaches, the contained alien worlds remained quiet. Automated monitors watched for weapons signatures and fleet movements. None ever came. Over time, faint signals were detected, not military but cultural. Music shaped by non-human senses, mathematics written as art, stories encoded in radiation patterns. Some humans argued these signals should be silenced. Others argued they were proof that the enemy had once been more than a weapon doctrine. Debate raged, but the borders held. Humanity chose vigilance without erasure. It was not forgiveness, but it was not extinction either. The fleet itself became legend. 700,000 warships turned into a number whispered with awe and fear. Museums displayed fragments of hull plating and scorched command chairs. Pilots were invited to speak, though many declined. Those who did talk spoke not of glory, but of coordination, of trusting strangers across light minutes and voids, of choosing targets knowing entire crews were on the other side. They spoke of restraint as much as rage, because even in vengeance, choices had been made. Exploration eventually resumed, cautiously, deliberately. Every first contact protocol was rewritten, expanded, and rehearsed. No ship traveled alone anymore. But when humanity met new civilizations, it did not arrive with weapons hot. It arrived with memory. Envoys spoke plainly about New Dawn, about the war, about the cost of assuming the worst. Some species recoiled in fear, others listened with understanding. A few admitted they too had faced exterminators in their histories. From those shared scars, alliances slowly formed. Far from Earth, a memorial beacon was placed at the edge of the ruined colony system. It broadcast names, millions of them, endlessly cycling. The beacon did not accuse, it did not threaten. It simply stated that these lives had existed. Ships passing through were required to cut engines for 1 full minute. In that silence, crews were reminded why the war had begun, and why it must never be repeated lightly. Humanity learned that survival was not just about strength. It was about what came after strength was used. The stars did not judge, they only remembered. Wreckage, radiation, altered orbits, these were the true records of intent. Earth accepted that legacy with open eyes. It continued forward, building, exploring, connecting, but always carrying the weight of 700,000 warships, and the knowledge that if the darkness came again, humanity would answer, not with fear, but with resolve.